under the theme Communication and Inequalities in Context. We are delighted to have scholars, researchers, faculty members, and students joining us for this engaging academic session. A special welcome to all our paper presenters whose research contributions and insights enrich the scholarly conversations that define this conference. The title of this technical session is Visual Culture, Public Discourse, and the Politics of Representation. Through a range of scholarly perspectives, this session explores how image and visual representations shape public understanding of people, events, identities, and social realities, and what power structures influence these representations. To guide us through today's proceedings, it is my pleasure to introduce you guys to our esteemed session chair, Professor Mrinal Chatterjee, journalist turned media academician. Mrinal Chatterjee presently works as a professor of practice in Odisha University of Technology and Research, Bhubaneswar, after his superannuation as professor of communication at the East India campus of Indian Institute of Mass Communication, located at Dhenkanal, Odisha. He also served as regional director of IIMC Dhenkanal for several years. He did D.Lit and PhD from Berhampur University and Masters in English Public Administration and JMC from Utkal and GJ University. He has authored 9 books and contributed 12 book chapters on mass communication. He also writes fiction, plays, and columns. Many of his novels have been translated into several Indian and foreign languages. His research interests include pedagogical innovations, environment, comic art, and partition films. Now, it is my privilege to invite Shovan Sengupta Sir, Assistant Professor, Mass Communication and Journalism Department, Sister Nivedita University, who is also the supervisor for this session, to felicitate our esteemed session chair, Professor Mrinal Chatterjee. We extend our sincere gratitude to our chair for kindly agreeing to moderate this session. Before we begin the session, I would like to briefly outline a few presentation guidelines. Each presenter will be allotted 7 minutes for their presentation. A warning bell will be rung at the 6-minute mark to indicate that 1 minute remains. At the end of the allotted time, the bell will ring twice to indicate the presentation to conclude. At the end of 1 minute, we will open the podium for another 1 minute for taking the questions. At the end of all the presentations, we will ask our esteemed chair to provide us with his observations, remarks, and comments. I kindly request all the presenters to adhere to the time limit to ensure smooth and efficient functioning of the session. Without further delay, I invite our session chair, Professor Mrinal Chatterjee, to take over the proceedings and begin the session.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you. Visual culture, public discourse, and politics of representation. That's the area in which I understand papers have been submitted. She has already given you the rules, right? Please stick to that. Let's begin. May I first invite Tanmoy Goswami from RV University, Bangalore. Right. Have we met?
Yeah, you have taken my interview during the recruitment of RV University.
See, world is a small place.
You were the external during my interview.
See, such a small world. So, please, his presentation is on between Scopus and the classroom, academic hierarchies and the politics of knowledge in regional universities of Eastern India. Very pertinent, very relevant and very, how should I put it? In Bangla there is a word called Sporshokator. What would be in English?
Sensitive.
Very sensitive. Very sensitive. All researchers, and especially who are into research with a thought that I might join academics, and in academia, in India, they are hell-bent that scopus mein aana chahiye. Otherwise, your PhD thesis will not be accepted. So, I do not know, we have a devta where people go and chadhawa dete hain to get visa. Are you aware of that? Visa dev hai. I do not know whether ek scopus dev hai ya nahi hai. अगर नहीं है तो होना चाहिए. नहीं? That is the importance of papers published in Scopus. And Scopus being Scopus, वो 1000 नखरा करेगा, हमारा इतना टाइम लगेगा, उतना टाइम लगेगा. And in communication domain, there are not many Scopus indexed journals. So that's another problem. Yesterday, how many of you have attended BP Sanjay sir's session? All of you? So he has addressed some of the concerns, isn't it? So probably that I can appreciate that this is a matter of concern. In our days, it was not a matter of concern because there was no such thing as you have to publish in Scopus indexed. But now it is there. But I never imagined somebody will write an academic paper on that. Should be interesting. Let's hear.
So thank you so much, sir, for this introduction to this paper. So good morning, and my respected session chair, media educators, scholars, and researchers. So as the name suggests, just directly going to the topic that between Scopus and classroom, academic hierarchies and the politics of knowledge in regional universities of Eastern India. So my background of the study was primarily when we are talking about major publications, legitimacy, and more importantly visibility across the globe, primarily it comes that the citation counts and university rankings, and more importantly the indexing system, the dominant paradigm of indexing system. And when it comes to Indian context, we don't generally discuss about the daily to daily strategy, survival and struggle of the research scholars, infrastructure, and more importantly the access to the journals and databases. So on that situation, particularly my central problem of the research is that how regional universities contribute meaningfully to the knowledge production, though most of the time their contribution to the academia and publications generally don't get that kind of academic recognition and visibility. So I have done so far a kind of integrated literature review, and you already mentioned 4 of them of the publications which are there in present scenario in the as per the access, but which we noticed there that more importantly all those papers and the scholarships generally deal with the academic stratification and symbolic capital more importantly, and publishing and citation hierarchies, and again there is a definite polarization between north and south epistemic divides. It is not talking about the, if I am going to address it like how the marginalized people, how the local people, how the indigenous community in academia, they are going to contribute, how they are contributing and surviving in this research scenario. So the existing gap in this scholarship, it is all about that global patterns of academic inequality, but and how these hierarchies has reproduced, experienced and negotiated. So that's the thing. So I'm just next I'm coming to my theoretical framework. Here generally I have dealt with 3 things. French scholar and Pierre Bourdieu, they have I have brought 3 concepts from him, that is habitus of knowledge, field and symbolic capital. It is all about that how the dominant voice we generally recognize how the dominant voice from generally European or Western countries, they are going to contribute and dominate the academia. Second one is Michel Foucault, again, these regimes of truth and institutional authority, and three more decolonial perspective I have brought here. That is, I believe that Southern theory is quite important. We generally consider all the European and the American concept primarily, and how we are contributing from South Asia or any of the continent, we are not taking into consideration. So positioning ourselves in a kind of a marginalized state, how we are going to introspect all those things, that is my theoretical framework. And I have just designed that in this manner, that is academic field, power of knowledge, publishing systems, academic legitimacy, epistemic inclusion, and decolonial critique. So my methodology here, I have taken both, it's a mixed method, qualitative and quantitative, and it is quite natural because my study sites I'm coming first, that is 3 universities, primarily Guwahati University, Dibrugarh University, and University of Burdwan. And my data sources, I use generally Scopus bibliometric dataset 2015 to 23, generally from Scopus Q1, Q2, or a so publication geometry effect is there. Metro-linked, generally, we know that research dominates the metro-centric universities, and that ecosystem is much more visible. International collaboration improves always the citation impact. It is not all the time academically. It is all about the, for the sake of name, for the dropping the name particularly. But yeah, and structural pattern, that is geography directly influences the academic recognition. So that is my third finding. That is 82% of the reviewer feedback generally emphasizes global relevance all the time. It is not about the contribution or the relevance of it. And regional contents frame as like less generalizable, locally relevant only all the time we noticed. This is my fourth finding. 76% of the scholars modified research topics for publication success only, which Sir said before this session. 64% engaged in metro collaboration strategies, and 58% prioritized journal indexing over anything. So last finding of my thing, that is, if you're going to the collaboration, international collaboration from Guwahati is 12%. Dibrugarh, it's a moderate publication volume, but low citation density. And University of Burdwan, balanced output, but not that kind of recognized globally. So I'm just coming to the discussion, that is academic visibility is structurally produced. Citation system always tries to reinforce this institutional hierarchy, so-called hierarchy. There is no written provision like that, but it is generally being observed. And triangulation validation, which I say that bibliometric patterns confirm interview narratives, discourse analysis validate the structural inequality claims. I'm coming to these limitations quickly. It is limited to 3 universities, and I have considered generally Scopus bibliometric model. Social science and humanities were my primary area of study, not the science or the STEM. So I'm coming to the final conclusion, that is academic visibility is always structurally produced, not neutral, and regional universities remain structurally invisible. Thank you so much. If there be any question, feel free to ask. Yes. Sir, because of the time late, sometime it happened. I have so many slides.
This, condense this instead of, speaking at a breakneck speed. जो rapper वाले को तरह, half of it, I couldn't understand sitting here. I don't know how much he could understand or he could understand. I do not know. How much you understand? So did you understand? Right? Lesson learned.
Yeah.
Reduce this. Right? Instead of speaking fast.
I'll do that next time, because data set was that huge and heavy. I tried to establish this thing.
Exactly. Go to the main themes, main areas, right? And
Yeah.
has to listen to it.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any questions before my comment? I had to put in much effort to understand बोल क्या रहा है.
Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Separately, क्यों?
No, not separately. Right after her presentation, she was talking about. Yes.
So we will allow her to ask after her presentation. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Anybody?
Yeah, please.
Yes, please.
did you study at 3 university? The availability of the Scopus paper or selection or acceptance of the Scopus paper in particular field, film and cultural studies or media studies?
3 trains particularly. First of all, their more or less frequency of publications in Scopus Q1 and Q2. Secondly, which I have done in discourse analysis, qualitative mapping, that is theme, common theme, how it is becoming relevant based on the citation, prior citation, and again the visibility. And third one is that the accessibility of the resources, research fund, and the time duration. Most of the time what I noticed since I studied in Tezpur University, my master's, I realized though it's a central university, sometimes it happened that there is no, I mean to say the equal access, there is inequality in accessing fund, grant or the resources. So that's the thing, more or less in a primary manner I have tried to study. Not exactly, not exactly. Okay, I will keep in mind. Yes. Thank you.
Methodologically very good, but like I have a feeling that the conclusion, people, I mean, whoever reads this paper or listens to this paper might have this kind of feeling that if we happen to be from rural areas or lesser known university, automatically my chance of getting published comes down. Automatically.
Systematically, sir, yes.
I have a problem there, right? Although your research and the way you mapped it, it shows that, but I still have a problem, right? So therefore,
So, sir, are you saying that the sampling process of inclusion of those universities is a little bit of predictable in terms of producing not that amount of research, or the chance of getting included in the global scenario in terms of, the making your presence visible? So that is already there. You are trying to, I mean to say, you are suggesting
So,
to change that.
so I have a little problem there, right? But however, I mean, this is for the first time that I have seen one paper on papers. This first time, which in itself is good. Chalo, theek hai.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. The second, Padmini Nandi Majumdar. The verbatim script, a study of textual fidelity in the audio adaptations of Satyajit Ray's Feluda. Those of you who are familiar with Satyajit Ray's character Feluda, I don't have to say anything, but those of you who have come from outside Bengal and not very familiar about the character Feluda, Feluda is a detective, private detective, youngish, in his 30s, smokes, not politically correct, but very sharp. And how does he go about his investigation? And that's Feluda. Pradosh. Pradosh Mitro. Meter? Mitro. Acha, meter likh do. Acha, meter.
It's on? Yes.
So that's Feluda. And as all Bengalis do, they have two names. And both the names have nothing to do with each other. Often.
Yes.
So, It's a very interesting study, Chalo.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Padmini, and I'm a research scholar at Dayanand Sagar University. As Sir has mentioned, the verbatim script, a study of textual fidelity in the digital audio adaptations of Satyajit Ray's Feluda stories, is the title of my paper.
Padmini, louder.
Is this okay? Yes?
Not okay, even louder.
Oh, okay, so I generally speak this thing. Okay, I am going to read from the paper because it's easier and faster to maintain time. The background came from the fact that internet platforms like YouTube and Spotify have changed how literary texts reach audiences. The dominant logic of digital adaptation is transformative. Texts should be compressed or simplified to fit standardized mass market formats. Think Reels, think TikToks, right? Platform capitalization creates structural pressure towards lexical simplification. Regional and vernacular literature is especially vulnerable to this flattening. Algorithmic dominance means that while dominant global languages navigate digital spaces with their literary complexity intact, like English and any other European language, regional media, especially from so-called third world or developing countries, must standardize to survive. My problem statement. Adaptation scholarship assumes that a text must mutate to survive a change in medium. Every major framework is built around film and television, where commercial demands require rewriting. Digital ethnographies confirm this. Platform algorithms flatten dialectical nuance and privilege standardized aesthetics over local authenticity. But Sunday Suspense's adaptations of Satyajit Ray's Feluda stories directly contradict this trend, and no existing adaptation framework accounts for them. My paper intends to do three things. It investigates how Sunday Suspense navigates the transition from page to voice while protecting Ray's original written sentences. Second, it defines the concept of verbatim remediation as a distinct, non-transformative custodial media practice. Third, it demonstrates how verbatim remediation functions as a structural mechanism for communication inclusivity in a stratified digital environment. My research questions were, the first was, what structural and linguistic modifications are required to maintain verbatim fidelity when print prose is remediated into an audio medium? Second, how do sonic elements like background music and sound effects act as compensatory mechanisms to preserve Ray's literary world without altering his original written syntax? My theoretical framework draws on two bodies of theory. The first is Walter Ong's concept of secondary orality, which states that electronic speech is permanently anchored to the written word. My paper extends this concept by saying this: when an audio drama reproduces print without changing any lexical or textual elements, it operates as verbatim secondary orality. The electronic voice becomes an acoustic vehicle, not an independent narrator. The oral performance does not operate independently. It delivers a vocal translation that preserves the exact syntax and vocabulary of the author's prose. The second framework I've taken is Bolter and Grusin's remediation theory, which specifically states that the principle of transparent immediacy, where the medium minimizes its own presence so that the audience engages directly with the original content. Sunday Suspense, which is the platform on which these stories can be heard, uses sound design and vocal performance to make the medium disappear. It does not transform the text. As of now, current adaptation scholarship does not have any framework for non-mutated custodial text preservation. That gap makes it necessary that the concept of verbatim remediation. My methodology, I have chosen three texts: Chinnomostar Obhishap, Hottapuri, and Gangtoke Gondogol. These are the top three stories, the top three most listened to stories on Sunday Suspense's platform. Each of them have, by the way, crossed 10 million views, which is crazy for an audio medium, I think. Each printed Bengali text was aligned line by line against its transcribed audio broadcast, and a comparative matrix was built across 3 operational matrices. That is textual deviations, which mean omissions and additions, any oral clarifications, the linguistic cues inserted to resolve visual and acoustic. There's a friction between visual and acoustic, and the acoustic and environmental layering, the timing and function of soundscapes and music, right? My findings. First, speaker attribution tags, phrases like Feluda bollo, Uni bollen. These things were systematically removed from every story because distinct vocal characterization renders them redundant in an acoustic space. For example, Sabyasachi Chakrabarti, the actor with a distinct voice, is who is playing Feluda in these stories, and the radio voice actor and the actor Mir, who I think all Bengalis know, he mostly plays the villains, right? Their voices are so immediately identifiable that you don't really need Ini bollen or Uni bollo in those contexts, right? The second is oral clarifications resolve what I'm calling visual acoustic friction. The clearest example is in Chinnamastar Obhishap, where Ray's original text contains an orthographic riddle built around 2 Bengali consonants, which is Dontosho and Talibosho, right? That are visually distinct on a page when we are reading them, but phonetically identical when spoken aloud. The production inserts conversational fillers like mane and uses emphatic vocal inflection to allow listeners to mentally reconstruct the spelling distinction. The listener can mentally see the spelling variation being discussed without the production rewriting a word of Ray's prose. Third, acoustic layering functions as complementary infrastructure, not as a substitute for missing description. Every line of Ray's prose is read aloud. Environmental sounds, the winds of the Himalayas. Is the time over? Oh, wow. Okay, I'll just quickly go through the discussion. Sunday Suspense demonstrates that the transition from print to digital broadcast does not require linguistic dilution. The practices documented here constitute a custodial media strategy with no precedent in transformative adaptation frameworks. I am naming that strategy verbatim remediation. Ray's prose is cosmopolitan, dense with English loanwords, global references, and geographical trivia that scholars identify as serving an explicitly educational function for generations of Bengali readers. By preserving this register word for word, Sunday Suspense resists algorithmic pressure and democratizes access to it. This access is more significant for the global Bengali diaspora. In international diaspora communities, spoken Bengali is maintained within domestic spaces, but literacy in the printed script is systematically lost across generations. For these listeners, traditional print is an insurmountable barrier to their own heritage literature. Sunday Suspense bridges this detachment, transforming the silent printed page into an accessible acoustic environment without sacrificing a word of Ray's original register. Thank you. I'm done.
Questions, anybody? No question? Oh, how many of you have raised Feluda series? Any one? Any one of the several stories? None? You probably? How many of you, at least one?
No one has listened to the stories? No one has listened to them? Anyone has listened to the Mirchi, Bangla, Sunday Suspense adaptations? Yeah.
Many of you listen to that. Somebody can do a paper on that. Instead of reading the original text, many have listened to that.
That is my thesis, sir. That is my PhD thesis. Please don't give them the idea.
Okay, right. I guess. Yeah, please.
I loved your paper, but actually being a storyteller, my work goes as an antithesis because there's a concept called page to stage that we work on, and it works on the contrary to this concept because we storytellers, majority of our community, rather most, all, We believe that whatever is there in the page, if you directly reproduce it verbatim, it doesn't hit the
Correct.
audience's
Correct.
mind.
And
So we take workshops to convert how stories can be tellable.
And that has been the feedback as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
But even in audio,
Right.
the way we write and the way we speak, the colloquial is somewhere missed. So I loved your work, but we will talk more about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, and this is true for other stories. This is only when I went and spoke to Indrani Chakrabarti, who is the head of creative content at Mirchi Bangla. She told me that this is only specific and only true for Ray's stories. Because maybe Ray wrote with such a cinematic freedom of voice and words, when as soon as it's like, she told me all we did was open the book and started reading and just put in background music. And we just, I mentioned, they just removed those fillers like Feluda Bollo, Uni Bollin. So those things were removed. Other than that, nothing was.
Right.
Sure, please.
This team closely, though have prominent division. One is
Right.
for
Right.
Mirchi Bangla and one is Radio Mirchi for traditional radio. So
Right,
what you
right.
were talking about the perspective, when you were adapting any text for audio medium particularly, definitely the perspective will be different. We are telling the story from a third person. When the sidekick, I'm talking about Topshe, is
Topshe.
narrating the story, it is
Yeah.
always in first person. So it's a
Right.
wonderful observation, what I believe.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the methodology, can you please explain this thing a little?
Okay, so I can actually, I have the methodology here. What I did was I took the print. I don't read Bangla very well at all. What I did was I was listening to the stories and I was trying to make sense of what the words were. I know a little bit of Bangla because again, I've not lived in Bengal, not studied Bengali writing and reading, right? So I placed both the text side by side. I was listening and I just copy pasted, and wherever there were any changes from the text in the audio version, I just made notes as in they've removed this, they have added this. For example, in Chinnamasar Abhishap, the Dontosho and Talibosho, it's in a puzzle where Mohesh Chaudhary writes it, Asha chilo na, Asha geche. Those are the two sentences. But one is Dontosho and one is Talibosho. But if you say it, Achha, if you don't explain the difference between Dontosho and Talibosho, that's the only line that they added. Because you can't see it on the paper.
Right, it is for the clarification for the audience. Got it,
yes,
thank
yes,
you.
yes.
This is a good paper. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Right, next I'd like to invite Dr. Shayonika Datta. She's an assistant professor in Cotton University. They say now Cotton University, not Cotton College University. They call it Cotton University now? Right, good. Okay, yep. Shayonika Datta and Chinmoyi Deka. You are Chinmoyi Deka, right. And research scholar in Tata's Institute of Social Sciences, Guwahati, and assistant professor in KIT, Bhubaneswar. You teach English?
No, sir. I teach mass
You teach mass comm?
Yes, sir. I have met him many times.
Acha. See? Acha. Chalo.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, respected session chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My study is titled Gendered Visuals, a Goffmanian Analysis of Bollywood Film Posters in the Post-COVID Era. So just to give a brief background, so in the study we have analyzed the different posters of Bollywood movies. Only we have selected the top 10 grossing movies because we wanted to synchronize with the popular reception of those movies. And we have selected post-COVID because after COVID ended, we saw a lot of OTT releases. And I wanted to make it a slightly comparative analysis. So we selected from 2022 to 2025. Now, for a long time, posters have been that first communication tool or strategy that introduces audiences to a movie. Until today, it continues to be that first information tool. And we have seen the medium change from hand-painted to cut-paste to digital, but despite that, it remains a deliberate and intentional communication tool through which movie makers wish to connect with their audiences. And because they want to connect with maximum of the masses, they go for a poster that will be approved by most of the masses. So most of the time it is politically aligned, it is socially aligned. They rarely go for something controversial that might be rejected at the very first visual. So they become a very nice reflection of the society at that point in time when the poster was released. Now, the study aims to answer these three questions. How do Goffman's categories of gender display reveal gendered power dynamics in the selected Bollywood film posters? Do recent Bollywood film posters challenge these categories or are simply reinforcing these categories? And how does the visual representation of women differ between OTT releases and Bollywood release film posters? Now, some of the key findings in the prior research has been that even in Hollywood posters when they were studied, it was observed that most of these posters presented women in damsel in distress kind of a... Yes, sir.
One or two lines on the methodology, please.
Yes, sir, I'll go into that. Yes, sir. So, in the damsel in distress attitude and less in a powerful role. And also, women have more often than not been sexualized in the posters. Men appear more frequently in the Oscar-winning movie posters that we have is something that has also been observed. And even in children's animated movies, we see the male characters being more pronounced, relatively much bigger in size and taking much of the spaces in the posters. Now, Bollywood film characters, on the other hand, appear more sexualized and less prominent than Hollywood counterparts. And Bollywood posters depict females as vulnerable, dependent, and often supporting the male rather than the main character herself. A little bit about the theoretical framework. Although the theory was first proposed in 1979, the study itself goes on to validate that it is relevant even today. However, Goffman initially came up with 6 categories, but it was later streamlined to 5. The element of the family was removed later on, so that the comparison remains strictly between male and female representation, rather than including children and relatives and other criterias. Now, these are the categories: relative size, feminine touch, function ranking, so whether the woman is shown as a wife or as a subsidiary to the female, what is her function. Ritualization of subordination, so whether she is in a lowered position, whether she is in a bent over position, whether she is in a different, lower position than the male. And licensed withdrawal, which basically focus on whether the women character is directly interacting with the audience or she is not looking at the audience and looking at something else in the poster. So coming on to the methodology, we wanted to select top 10 OTT and top 10 theatre releases from each year. So there was 20 movies in total, but in one of the years in 2022, we saw lesser movies. Hence, we had to include all the OTT releases that year, and that's why the number is 78. And we went through a visual content analysis, keeping the Goffman's categories in mind. So we looked at each and every poster, keeping the 5 categories in mind. And the variable measured are the categories. We used a mixed method approach because we did quantify like how much percentage of how many movie posters actually showed female leaning, how many showed male leaning. We did quantify on that. But our major focus was on the qualitative descriptive analysis, where we wanted to find out the whys as to why we are seeing a certain pattern and what exactly is that pattern in that particular data set. So some of the key findings, we find male leads dominate poster space. They're usually in the central position and much larger than the female characters. Exceptions are very few when the movies are female led. So we have Gangubai Kathiawadi, we have Crew where all the 3 characters were female, and we also have Street 2. Now because even though Street 2 has multiple male movie characters, the female gets the center stage because the main character Street itself was based on a female lead. Function ranking, males are depicted in action. So most of the time, if it's an action-oriented movie, they are seen holding the weapon. They are seen in a walking stance or a running stance, okay? So they are never seen as very passive. They're not seen sitting or simply standing and silently watching. They're always in action. So some of the examples are Tiger 3 and War 2. Females are more often shown in romantic or emotional or passive roles. For example, even in the poster of Rocky or Rani, wherein the name itself suggests that the two characters are equally important, we see that Rani is represented in a lot more submissive manner than Rocky himself. Then feminine touch, female characters frequently use a light decorative touch, grazing with her fingers grazing, and also showing male characters on the other hand are shown to have a strong grip over whatever they are carrying in case they are in the placed in the poster purposely. Female characters are always shown leaning, seated or physically lower than the male counterparts. For example, in movies like Teri Baaton Mein Uljha Jiya, Sayyara, etc. And males are consistently depicted upright, commanding the frame. Female characters are also shown either looking away or looking down or looking at the male character itself. They are rarely looking directly into the camera. Sexualization is another aspect that we have added. So sexualized depiction of female characters observed more frequently in OTT than in theatrical release. Now this goes on to support the fact that traditionally women are not accepted in hypersexualized roles when the movies are released on theatre. That's much more, so for mass appeal, they do not over-sexualize the women. But in case of OTT, since we see a much more niche audience, they are more open to putting the women in the center of the poster, as well as also over-sexualizing or hypersexualizing. So I'll just get into the discussion quickly. So we see selective female agency. Now in movies where the female is the strong lead, definitely she's presented strongly. But in case of genre, so for we see that genre is one of the key determinants. Action films centralize male power, whereas domestic dramas and thrillers show greater possibility of the female being represented equally. Just in the conclusion, now I would like to focus on the last few. The first we have already been discussed in the findings. So majority posters reinforce existing gender stereotypes. So they are not really challenging the norm, they are reinforcing it. Even though we see that females are more represented more in OTT releases, but this only indicates that there is an awareness of change, but it's not a systemic shift. It is done so because they know that the audience is there. It is not done because they know that they will not get any sort of oppose from there. That's why they present it there. But despite putting the women in the center, they have the constant sexualization of women has been consistent, be it in theatrical or in OTT. So that's all. So the difference is mainly due to audience targeting and platform economics rather than deliberate gender equity. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, please.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Sahil, and my question is related to the title of your presentation, where the term post-COVID, throughout the presentation, I could not grasp the idea of the significance of the term post-COVID there. So did you find any impact of COVID over the representation of male and female figures in the movies?
No. The reason we went for post-COVID selections deliberately was because we wanted to select equal number of OTT movies and theatrical releases so that the study and the findings can be fairer. And before COVID, there were not that many OTT releases. So we deliberately went for post-COVID era when OTT releases became a norm. And even main stars, they started releasing on OTT. Before that, we would only find medium budget and low budget movies mostly releasing in OTT. And if we would have analyzed with those movies, then the findings would not have been very, fair per se, because in medium budget and low budget movies, we still see good representation of women. But it is in those main, blockbuster movies where we don't see women being equally represented as men when it comes to the storyline and posters. So that is why we deliberately selected post-COVID.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
It's more like a suggestion. When you're doing a presentation which is based on visual content, try and put in a couple of posters, because we are constantly trying to get back in our mind what the posters were like. Yes. That's number one. And number two, I'm sure in your paper you've done the transition. In terms of numbers, the shift.
Yes.
So there has to be a shift from the number of posters which are male dominated to poster to neutral to a neutrality to a sudden shift towards. So if you can show that also in your paper, I think it would be, I'm sure you've done it, means if you can in terms of numbers, tale it would be much more better.
Yes, sir. There is quite a visible difference, shift in terms of numbers. When we look at movies, not from the year basis though, more like from theatrical release to OTT, there is quite a significant shift. And sir, I was really tempted to include the posters, believe me, sir, but because of the number of slides, I kept it. Like I could not exceed a certain number. Yes, definitely.
You could
Thank
have
you
put
so much.
that. Yeah.
Sir, actually, I thought if I put, then their number of slides will increase. That's why I did not. But I
Next
think,
time.
yes, sir, I will do it.
I think I'll suggest to the organizers that next time you increase the number of slides, not text, only picture visuals.
Yes, for visuals.
Only
yes, yes.
only for visuals.
Thank you,
Right?
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, may I request Sudipta Das, research scholar from Vishwabharati, and his subject is framing crisis and catastrophe, power, voice, and audiovisual narratives of the 26/11 Mumbai attacks on OTT platforms. Right. There are quite a number of OTT series on Mumbai attack.
Shall I begin, sir?
Framing crisis and catastrophe, power, voice, and audiovisual narratives of the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. Yes, you may begin.
Today I will be presenting our paper titled Framing Crisis and Catastrophe, Power, Voice and Audiovisual Narratives of the 26/11 Mumbai Attacks on OTT Platforms. This study particularly examines how OTT platforms have reconstructed the 26/11 Mumbai attacks and how different narrative choices influence the representation of crisis, authority, voice and suffering. Sorry, sir? Yes, Dr. Orpon Paul. He happens to be my supervisor. He couldn't be present here due to... So, as we all are aware about that the 26/11 Mumbai attacks in the year 2008 was not only a major crisis, but also one of the most widely covered crises in the history of television in India. The continuous live coverages transformed the attacks into a national and global media event. More than a decade later, what we see now, the OTT platforms have revisited the same event through fictionalized and much more dramatized narratives such as State of Siege 26/11, Mumbai Diaries 26/11, and Hotel Mumbai, which happens to be the corpus of my content analysis, which I will discussing later. So this transition from real-time news coverage to long-form OTT storytelling raises few important questions. Now, what are the questions here? How a crisis is remembered? Whose experience becomes visible? Which actors are given prominence? And how do these narratives shape public understanding of the attacks? Rather than examining the question of factual accuracy, this study focuses on narrative framing and explores how different representations construct different meanings around the same historical event. Moving on to my research objectives, as we are actually having a dearth of time, I won't read out the objectives, but I shall be saying a single thing about it, like this objectives basically helps us to understand how media narratives shape interpretations of crisis and catastrophe. So I will move on to the a central research question of this particular study, that how do these select OTT productions frame the 26/11 Mumbai attacks through the distribution of voice, narrative centrality, authority and representation of suffering. Moving on to the literature insights and theoretical framework, I have basically incorporated Robert Entman's framing theory, where according to Entman, framing involves selecting certain aspects of reality and making them more salient within a communicative text. He identifies 4 major framing functions: defining problems, diagnosing causes, making moral evaluations, and suggesting remedies, which are basically my analytical categories as well that I have used for my coding. So coming on to the literature insights, previous scholarship suggests that media representations of disaster are selective constructions rather than neutral reflections of society. Such representations often privilege certain actors, experiences, and perspectives while marginalizing others. The studies have shown that disaster narratives frequently rely on recurring themes such as heroism, resilience, sacrifice, and collective action. Building on these insights, this study uses framing theory to examine how OTT narratives reconstruct the crisis of 2611 through different narrative priorities and representational choices. I'll move on to my research methodology. As I mentioned, that the study adopts a qualitative content analysis approach. 3 productions were selected: State of Siege, Mumbai Diaries, and Hotel Mumbai. These are basically, for the inclusion criteria, I have selected productions that were mainly intended for OTT and not the theatrical releases. Purposive sampling strategy was used to identify scenes that featured key actors involved in or who are affected by the crisis, and scenes depicting crisis events, response actions, or the consequences after the crisis. The analysis was conducted using 4 analytical categories, and also with considering the Entman's theory and the coding categories developed from it. The distribution of voice that examined who gets to speak, whose perspectives were prioritized; narrative centrality, which examines who occupies the entire center of the story; construction of authority, which focuses on decision makers and crisis leaders who are represented; and the representation of suffering, which explores how trauma, loss, and vulnerability were depicted. Moving on to my first set of key findings that reveal significant differences in narrative focus across this production. State of Siege primarily frames the attacks through security response, institutional coordination, and crisis communication. The narrative foregrounds counter-terror operations while also highlighting the role of media and information flow during the crisis. Mumbai Diaries, on the other hand, frames the attacks as a healthcare emergency, focusing on hospitals, medical professionals, and the challenges that comes with emergency response. In contrast, Hotel Mumbai centers on civilians and survivors, foregrounding vulnerability, survival, and human resilience. The distribution of voice also differs considerably. Institutional actors dominate in the state of siege, where healthcare workers dominate in Mumbai Diaries, where civilians and hotel staff becoming the primary narrators in Hotel Mumbai. Coming on to the second set of findings, which concerns suffering, authority, and framing. In State of Siege, suffering is acknowledged but often mediated through operational response and media reporting. In Mumbai Diaries, suffering is represented as collective trauma experienced by both victims and healthcare workers. In Hotel Mumbai, suffering is highly personalized through fear, uncertainty, confinement, and survival. Authority is also constructed differently. Security institutions and intelligence networks are central in State of Siege. Medical expertise and professional responsibility dominate in Mumbai Diaries. Importantly, State of Siege also portray media as having a dual role, both facilitating information flow and at times creating operational vulnerabilities through live reporting, which we have all seen. So I'll just wrap up. To conclude, the study demonstrates the same historical event can be framed in fundamentally different ways. While State of Siege constructs the attacks primarily as a security and communication crisis, Mumbai Diaries frames them as a humanitarian and a healthcare emergency, and Hotel Mumbai frames them as a struggle for survival. These differences influence whose voices are heard,
whose suffering is made visible, and whose authority is legitimized. The findings therefore suggest that communication inequalities operate within crisis narratives through unequal distribution of voice, visibility, authority, and suffering. And as OTT platforms increasingly become sites of public memory, this representational choice play an important role in shaping how different crises may be represented in the OTT platforms, and we must take care of it. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes, please.
So thank you for this presentation. I just want to know from you, as a researcher, you have described spectator's point of view. Most of the times, our positionality
Actually,
skips.
but this particular research, sorry to interrupt you in
Yeah.
between, this particular research was based on how the OTT producers have, actually they have presented
Yeah.
the same crisis in the three series.
Fine.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to bring the perspective and a question also. So most of the times as a researcher, our positionality doesn't want to look how the storyteller imagined that memory to be shown to the people. So there is some creative compulsion to be placed in the visual description.
Absolutely.
So I would like to remind and ask you also, would you like to take care of that aspect in your study?
Absolutely, yes. Actually, my PhD work is also based on how disaster narratives are framed. That's absolutely an important point. Although, in this regard, I would also like to say there are many mini documentaries or documentaries in OTT itself who present the actual testimonials of those victims who have survived and their families. But that's, yes, that's an actually great point that I can obviously incorporate in my future studies. Yes, sir.
Shudip, at finish, তুই তো ফ্রেমিং ইয়েটাকে ইউজ করেছি মানে ইউ শুড মানে could it be a little better if you could also add the memory framing?
Yeah, definitely, sir.
কেন কি we are seeing the incident in the hindsight and how public remembers it, because you are constantly talking about the trauma, you're talking about the psychological part of it. So if you had used the memory framing part to separate your paper from the construction of the reconstruction of the trauma and the psychological impact it had on the society as a whole, I think if you can break it into two parts, it would be much more meaningful. That's it.
Sure, sir. I'll
Yeah.
keep that in mind. Thank you.
Which go to the conclusion part. The last point in the conclusion, the findings reveal communication inequalities in the distribution of voice. Like, I have a problem with the findings reveal communication inequalities. It doesn't reveal communication inequalities. It shows
Representational
in a particular
inequalities.
way that the director thinks apt.
That's absolutely true, sir.
Are you getting
Yes,
my
yes,
point?
I'm getting it.
So
Or
it's-
representational inequalities.
So I guess that needs to be removed altogether. I mean, the last point, right? That's my observation.
absolutely, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Now, may I request Dr. Mukesh Kumar, who is assistant professor in MMHA and P University, Bihar. And the title of the paper is Muslim and Islamophobia in Indian Hindi Press. Critical Discourse Analysis.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mukesh Kumar, PGDP, Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Maulana Mazharul Haq, Arabic and Persian University, Patna, Bihar. Today I will present my research paper titled Muslims and Islamophobia in Indian Hindi Press, Critical Discourse Analysis. This study examines how Muslims and Islams are represented in leading Hindi newspapers and whether such representation contribute to Islamophobic discourse. Media plays a crucial role to shaping public opinion and social attitude. For many people, media serve as a primary source of information about communities with whom they have little direct interaction. Therefore, media portrayal can influence perception, reinforce stereotype, and shape social reality. Globally, Muslim have frequently has been represented through narrative related to terrorism, extremism, and security concern. The study investigate whether similar patterns exist within the Indian Hindi press. Previous studies conducted in Europe and United States in India suggest the media often portrayed Muslims negatively. Researchers have identified theme, violence, extremism, cultural and social threat. There is relatively limited research examining representation of Muslim in Islam in Hindi newspapers. And problem statement is the study investigate how Muslims and Islam are portrayed in the Indian Hindi newspapers and examines whether such representation contribute to stereotype, prejudice, and Islamophobia. The study have 3 research objectives. They examine in frames regarding Muslim and Islam in leading Indian Hindi newspapers to analyze the intensity of coverage about Muslim and Islam to get the understanding of the Indian Hindi press, to explore the difference between the portrayal of Muslim and Islam in each Indian Hindi newspaper. The research question how the Islam and Muslim presented in Dainik Bhaskar, Amar Ujala, Rajasthan Patrika, Hindustan, and Dainik Jagran. The research methodology. The research adopted a mixed method as approach. The 5 leading Hindi newspapers were selected basis of their circulation, Audit Bureau of Circulation. 1, Dainik Bhaskar, Amar Ujala, Hindustan, Rajasthan Patrika, Dainik Jagran. News reports, editorial and article containing keywords such as Muslim, Islam, extremism, militancy, terrorism. Were selected the analysis qualitative and quantitative. नहीं हिंदी का इसमें अनुवाद, क्योंकि हिंदी अखबार था तो ये अतिवाद, उग्रवाद, अतिवाद या अतिवाद, आतंकवाद, टेररिज्म, आतंकवाद, उसको भी आतंकवाद, अतिवाद, एक जी वो ओके, एक मिलिटेंसी में सब सैन्यवाद एज ए मिलिटेंसी, सैन्यवाद, उग्रवाद सॉरी, टेररिज्म, आतंकवाद. जी, I will accommodate, sir. जी, there is a coding scheme. That ये coding scheme adopted by Islamophic discourse or by Nida Laura's Islamophobic discourse in a story type, violent, radical, backward, criminal, and threatening to society, anxieties, and racialization. And these are the findings. The total of 1387 news items related to Muslim and Islam were analyzed from 5 major Hindi newspapers: Dainik Jagran, the most 384. After that, Amar Ujala, Dainik Bhaskar, Rajasthan Patrika, and Hindustan. The most dominant Islamophobic frame across all newspapers was the perception of inner threat associating Muslim with insecurity, extremism and terrorism. Dainik Jagran and Amar Ujala showed higher level of stereotype and common stereotype. Muslims were violent and extremist. Muslim women as oppressed. Islam as a socially backward. Muslim as a security threat. And negative, positive aspect in the 41% is negative, 30% positive. And Hindustan provide completely less coverage, but the positive coverage than other 4 newspapers. The finding indicate that perception of inner threat, the Muslims were frequently associated with security concern, narratives of violence and extremism appeared. Muslims were often represented as a collective group rather than a diverse individual. The study concludes that the Indian Hindi press generally portrayed Muslim and Islam through negative frames, contributing to Islamophobic discourse. Media narrative frequently generalize, exaggerate, and metaphors, and which reinforce stereotype. To conclude, media plays a powerful role in shaping public understanding of religious communities. The study demonstrates the element of Islamophobic discourse continue to appear in section of the Hindi press through stereotype and racial representation. However, examples are balanced reporting also exists. Therefore, ethical journalism, inclusive reporting practice, are diverse representation are essential for promoting social harmony and democratic value. Media representation matters. Balanced reporting can reduce prejudice, while biased narrative can strengthen social division and Islamophobic attitude. Thank you.
So it's a really interesting paper and a really interesting topic, especially in this climate. The question that I have is, first of all, sir, did you consider the local editions of these newspapers? For example, local editions of the newspaper. For example, like there is a Uttarakhand edition, like a Dehradun edition also. There is a Shimla edition of Amar Ujala, Dainik Jagran. So that is one question that I had. Second question that I had is, while you were mapping these stories, did you notice a rise in more negative stories at certain times of the year? Or when certain events took place, or when certain political movements were about to happen? मतलब जब आपको तो हाँ
ये दिल्ली से प्रकाशित जो समाचार पत्र हैं उनके एडिशन लिए गए हैं, हाँ, नेशनल एडिशन, और ये 2025 की स्टडी है जी। नहीं, दिल्ली एडिशन वेबसाइट से ऐप से दिल्ली एडिशन, और 2025 का ही ये है। तो नहीं, कभी कोई ऐसा रिमार्केबल मंथ नहीं था, लेकिन हाँ, ये जब बच्चे चोरी वाला मामला और जो मॉब लिंचिंग वाला था, उस समय थोड़ा सा बढ़ जाता है, ये मई जून के आसपास। जी
आप जब न्यूज़ कंसिडर कर रहे थे, आप पिक्चर्स कंसिडर किए हैं? क्योंकि जब आप एक न्यूज़ कंसिडर कर रहे हैं, पिक्चर्स आर ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट सोर्सेज ऑफ न्यूज़. हाउ आर यू डिपिक्टिंग देम और अस और एवरीवन इन पिक्चर्स? क्योंकि इट क्रिएट्स अ मच मोर impact, because we see something visually, we tend to remember it more often. So मेरे को लगा कि आप खाली खबर लेके और न्यूज़ लेके किए हैं, आपको इसमें अगर इसमें माने सही मायने में आपको ये डिफरेंस और ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग करना है तो आप पिक्चर्स भी कंसिडर कीजिए कि एक स्टोरी के साथ कहीं पर एक मुसलमान भाई उसने किसी का पैसा लौटा दिया, उसको किस तरह से दिखाया जा रहा है, या फिर कोई एक डॉन पकड़ा गया है वो मुसलमान है तो उसको कैसे दिखा दे, माने हाउ आर यू शोइंग देम इन द पिक्चर और एट ऑल आर यू गिविंग अ पिक्टोरियल डिपिक्शन। तो ये अगर थोड़ा ऐड कर लेते तो मेरे को लगता है कि ये बेहतरीन हो जाता।
एक पिक्चर है जो मैं बताना चाहूँगा कि उत्तर प्रदेश में कांवड़ यात्रा के समय मुसलमान भाइयों ने फूल बरसाए, वो तस्वीर थी उस पर। चूँकि मेरा न्यूज़ पे ही था इसलिए मैंने किया, नहीं अगले बार बिल्कुल जी।
मुकेश जी, ये जो आपने रिसर्च किया है, ये बिलीव मी ये बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट रिसर्च है, बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट रिसर्च है। तो इसे और ज़्यादा इसको ध्यान से कीजिए। 2-3 चीज़ें, एक पर्टिकुलर किसी टाइम पे, दैट्स अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग, पर्टिकुलर कोई इंसिडेंट की बाद स्पाइक होता है क्या नेगेटिव न्यूज़ का। हाँ, हाँ, व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू टेल यू, इसका ना कुछ पहलू भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। अगर इसको भी इंक्लूड करोगे ना, बिलीव मी इट कैन बी अ ग्रेट बुक, ग्रेट बुक। ठीक है, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रिसर्च आपने किया है। 2 बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट, क्या नाम है आपका? पद्मिनी ने फ्लैग किया। नंबर 1 है, कोई पर्टिकुलर इंसिडेंट के बाद न्यूज़ में स्पाइक होता है क्या। सेकंड, कोई इंपॉर्टेंट त्योहार के आसपास स्पाइक होता है क्या। आर यू गेटिंग माय पॉइंट? ये अगर आप मैप करते हो, और उसके साथ अनिंदम ने जो पॉइंट आपको कहा कि फोटोग्राफ्स कितने हैं और किस एंगल में हैं, हाउ आर दे शोइंग। Like so for example in this photograph where फूल बरसा रहे हैं, it's a very positive kind of photograph, right? That means a lot. So those also should be included in this research. Believe me, if you include this and do another short kind of a mapping of what the local editions do. अच्छा, ये आप कहाँ के हो?
मैं पटना का हूँ।
पटना का हो। तो जो पटना एडिशन है, एक तो दिल्ली का एडिशन हो गया। दिल्ली का एडिशन आपने ये सर्वे किया, मैपिंग आपने दिल्ली का एडिशन किया ना। आप
दिल्ली का हाँ,
पटना का एडिशन कीजिए, है ना। तो एक और एंगल निकल सकता है कि नेशनल एडिशन और लोकल जो पटना की एडिशन, उसमें कुछ ज़्यादा अंतर तो नहीं। अगर ज़्यादा अंतर है, जो कि मुझे लगता है होगा, अगर ज़्यादा अंतर है, मेरा हाइपोथेसिस है होगा, तो क्या कारण है कि यहाँ इतना अंतर हो जाता है। जो दिल्ली में स्टोरीज होते हैं और पटना में होता है, इतना अंतर क्यों है
जी।
If these 3-4 things are included, believe me, this could be a very good book. It's not only a paper, and very important paper, right? Thank you.
सर कुछ और जोड़ना चाहूँगा मैं। दैनिक जागरण ने एक खबर चलाई थी, टांडा में एक व्यक्ति था जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने उसे बरी कर दिया था, लेकिन फिर भी दैनिक जागरण ने फ्रंट पेज पर ये खबर चलाई कि आतंकवादी को सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने रिहा किया। आतंकवादी को सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने रिहा किया, जबकि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने उन्हें नॉन गिल्टी करके फ्री किया था, फिर भी उन्होंने आतंकवादी शब्द का प्रयोग किया।
ग्रेट।
दूसरा ये है कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने रोहिंग्या को इलीगल इमिग्रेंट कहा था, लेकिन सुप्रीम कोर्ट को कोर्ट करते हुए अमर उजाला ने छापा था कि ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा है कि आतंकवादी हैं। तो मैंने प्रेस काउंसिल ऑफ इंडिया को लिखा भी था और बात भी हुई थी। और
ये जो सारी चीज़ें ये शायद इस पेपर में पूरा ना आ पाए क्योंकि पेपर की एक लिमिटेशन होता है, बट कीप ऑल these are very important inclusions. It could be very important inclusions in the book. My suggestion, our suggestion actually will be, please write a book on this. Right? Thank you.
और
Give him a very big hand.
एक,
Thank you.
एक और अभी 2 घटना हुई बकरीद के दिन। एक बच्चे ने, एक मुस्लिम बच्चे ने हिंदू बच्चे की हत्या कर दी। वो मोर अटेंशन ऑन द टीआरपी टीवी, लेकिन मालवीय नगर होटल में जो अग्निकांड हुई उसमें एक गरीब गद्दे वाला जिसने अपने 2 लाख के गद्दे को बर्बाद करके लोगों की जान बचाई, वो उतनी खबर में नहीं आई, न टीआरपी के दृष्टिकोण से और न न्यूज़ पेपर के दृष्टिकोण से। और बहुत लोग जानते भी नहीं हैं कि उन्होंने ऐसा किया। दोनों, एक चूँकि मुस्लिम नेगेटिव मर्डर किया तो वो खबर ज़्यादा आई, और एक जिसने अच्छा काम किया उसने। तो ये चीज़ें हैं, चूँकि मैं जहाँ पढ़ाता हूँ वहाँ 90% मुसलमान बच्चे हैं, वो ऐसा कहते हैं, तो मैंने कहा कि इस पे काम करना चाहिए। थैंक यू। हाँ, थैंक यू।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, ये एक इम्पॉर्टेंट बुक होगा। राइट, सो मे आई गिव हिम अ वेरी बिग हैंड। नेक्स्ट मे आई रिक्वेस्ट रतन कुमार जी, research scholar from Pondicherry University, and his paper is Ratan Kumar. नहीं है? अच्छा. So may I request then Shayantika Datta, research scholar from St. Xavier's, and Reshmi. Reshmi is the co-author. She has come? No, it's okay. Chalo. And her Shayantika's paper is exploring the dynamics of algorithmic literacy, a systematic literature review of gender bias in algorithmic media platforms. कुछ डिफिकल्ट है मेरे लिए भी समझना। And we have one more paper after this before we end.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone present here. The Honorable Chair and respected scholars and associate professors here. So the paper that I'll be talking about is exploring the dynamics of algorithmic literacy, and I have tried to map it through a systematic literature review on basically on gender bias in algorithmic media platforms. So I'll talk a bit about the main 3 components of the paper. That is first the algorithmic literacy. The second is on the algorithmic media platforms, that is the social media platforms, there are a number of inequalities or a number of biasness that do exist. And among them, one such constant is gender bias, and my paper today deals about that. So basically, when the digital boom happened, first with the introduction of the social media platforms, a disruption did occur in the dissemination of media content, consumption of the media content, and even how users' perceptions were being performed, perceptions were created around these media content. So the second disruption, I believe, that occurred is through the introduction of algorithmic, algorithm. Because when we talk about the first digital boom that happened, we talked about that media literacy is important because accessing the correct kind of information is the new question of the day. But when the algorithm came into being, understanding the algorithm or how the algorithm is disrupting between the human and the technology, how it is interfering. That became the new form of literacy, or that became the new digital literacy 2.0 that we can say, that people, or a certain skill set that people need to acquire. The second thing is that when I talk about algorithmic literacy being the call for the day or being important, I also want to shed light that when we access content through algorithmic media platforms, we also understand that these particular social media platforms work on algorithms, and they tend to often more than often tend to create echo chambers or kiosks of our own behavior, because algorithms are basically a certain data that is being fed. They try to understand our behavior, they try to go through the kind of content that we are viewing, and they try to expose us to exactly those type of content that we are maybe not always, I would say, not always viewing it actively, but sometimes also passively we also view certain content. Now the significance of my study here comes into being is because when we talk about algorithm, the gender, especially when I talk about the gender, now gender itself talks about a lot of smaller strands. When gender representation is being talked about, it talks about a lot of different strands, but algorithmic representation or algorithmic literacy in accessing those strands of gender, there is a disparity, there is a gap that do exist, because as I said, that the media platform works on the algorithm, and they tend to box us into binary concepts more than considering all the stratas of gender that do exist, or that representation where is required. So the research questions or the research objectives that I have in hand is to identify those gender biases embedded within the recommended engines and automated content moderation systems of contemporary algorithmic media platform. The second is to analyze the gaps or the challenges in the content representation of gender, and how algorithmic literacy can help us to address these ethical concerns. Because I believe algorithmic literacy alone cannot bring about ethical consideration, but it can be one of the factors among the many. And the last is to understand the intersectional dynamics between the two major sections of my study, that is algorithmic literacy and the gender oppression that do occur. Now the research questions that I have at hand is, what are the main areas and the topics studied regarding how social media algorithms affect content creators and gender bias. Now when I have looked forward for the literature, I have done a systematic literature review, and I have taken articles that are from 2020 to 2025. I have purposefully not selected the 26 and prior that, because algorithm or the necessary awareness about algorithm, I believe, has started from that particular period of time. And second is, how can algorithmic literacy help to mitigate the challenges, not eradicate, but mitigate the challenges that exist in gendered representation. And last is, can heightened or can proper algorithmic literacy arrest the algorithmic bias that do exist as far as gendered content is concerned. So like I said, I did a systematic literature review, and according to that, I have mapped a few themes that emerged from the papers that I have selected. And like I said, that algorithms generally box the users or the content viewers into binary boxes, and in that the most oppressed or the most stigmatized are the women. It has been in other parts of research, it has always been mentioned that women have been stigmatized, women have been oppressed. Women, when representation is concerned, they are one such strata of the gender, the cloud of gender that has been the form of oppression, form of stigma always. So how the data is being fed, how the pictures or the images of women are being there, that the themes I have analyzed, how algorithmic, how the data is being fed. And what I believe is a gap or a challenge that emerges from that is that the proper data set about women, what they want or what kind of images that they want to create in the back end of the algorithm, not on the forefront, on the viewing perspective, but on the back end, when the data is being fed, there is a gap that lies there. The second is that when we as not only women users, but all users in general, when we are viewing content, we need to, there is a box that comes as interested and not interested. So if we are a bit careful and rational at the same time in viewing those content, maybe it cannot be completely arrested, but somewhat curbed at that, because like I said, the heightened algorithmic literacy can help to at least mitigate the problem, if not arrest it completely. And lastly, I just want to talk about one more important findings, is that what we see is a biased algorithmic decision making will create a real world discrimination. And similarly, like a black box theory, it is basically from the political science. That's how the voting behavior actually functions. As a feedback loop that happens, that will create a biased content on algorithmic media, and it will ultimately create a digital world bias. What I want to propose, yes, so what I want to propose is that as users or as someone who at the back ends are creating the content, they should produce much more varied type of content. We as viewers should not only passively do second screening, but also expose ourselves to various such content, so that this continuous feedback loop or the echo chamber that we very popularly say can be broken. We can have a lot. We can form a number of opinions. Like we have a theory in mass communication which clearly says that the moment you, instead of selectively choosing the data or selectively choosing opinions that you have a liking towards or you have a preference towards, instead of that, if you expose yourself to some conflicting views, some conflicting opinions, maybe you will end up forming newer opinions and newer strategies, and exactly that's how this can be dealt. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
So you spoke about algorithmic literacy. So
Yes.
when it comes to about the discussion, most of the times it focuses on the user's ability to understand the algorithms.
Absolutely.
So my question is, should the responsibility to mitigate gender bias must lie with the users or the program developers or the regulating bodies? So how much, like how does your study address this responsibility? I mean the distribution of responsibility.
Sure. I have basically focused on the user part. I have focused more on the social or the psychological, socio-psychological part, and not much on the technical or the machine learning part. That is why I believe my paper tries to address it from the user perspective mostly. Somewhat through the literature review, what all points I could get from the technical part of the machine learning, since algorithm is basically a machine learning language. So from that part, whatever I could garner, I included. But I think my limitation as a social science researcher is that I have limited myself to that part mostly.
What's your name? Anvesh. Right. Good. Yes.
Yes.
So the theory that you're talking about, it's cognitive dissonance, right?
Yeah.
So
No, cognitive dissonance theory in particular I did not talk about. I wanted to form a framework devised from that theory.
Right.
I'm not discussing the theory in particular here.
Right. But what you're trying to say, what I understood was you're trying to say that people should ideally force themselves to, change what they are constantly viewing.
No, not really. I said that people should expose themselves to not only the primary concepts or the beliefs that you have as a user, but also to maybe like we all are exposed to second screening viewing. Like passively also we are viewing some form of content that do not primarily align to our thought process.
Okay, so you're saying we should do more of that as viewers.
Yes, we can practice more of that so that maybe...
Are there papers or are there any case studies where it has been successful?
I have not yet found. Maybe there are, because like I said, I limited it to the 2025 study.
Okay. No, that's what I wanted to ask.
Thank you.
One small limitation, hoche, the binaries that you are talking about, when you are talking about excluding the accruing of the content, what you are excluding is another set of users who are actually putting those content forward. So there are two kind of, see here the creators are also users.
Absolutely. They are not watertight.
Yes. So you just can't block out one section. What I'm trying to say is that when you are talking about the binaries of response, or when you're talking about people trying to look at other sectors which are conflicting to their thoughts or methodologies, you're also talking about people who are creating it and using it also. So if you could add that to your research, that I think you'll complete the full cycle, because the black box theory that you've talked about, the lower half of that, when you are talking about how the feedback will be generated, it is going to the user again.
Absolutely.
So it's a cycle.
Yeah.
So unless you complete that section, I think if you add that section, I think your research would be much more wholesome.
Thank you. I will definitely include it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Last paper, Dr. Priyanka Chatterjee, Arts for Change International, and her paper is Beyond Vision, Sensory and Embodied Storytelling as a Bridge Across Communication Inequalities.
Good afternoon, everyone. To start with, I would like to request you, all of you, can you close your eyes for next 10-20 seconds, please? All of you. Let's close our eyes. Everyone, including the chairs. Everyone, close your eyes. Yes, all of you. Thank you so much. Now, I would like you to imagine, think of your most favorite person in the world. Whose face can you see? You don't need to tell me, but try to see the face. Can you visualize this person? There might be 2-3 people popping up as well, which is absolutely fine. And by now, I think you already can see someone. So with that, I invite you to open your eyes once again. For me, this person was my father. And we can see, but my father couldn't see anymore. He lost one of his eyes because of wet AMD, age-related macular degeneration. And one eyesight was totally lost, the other one, 85%. Which is one of my major inspiration going for this particular study. We live in a world deeply saturated by visual media, from our smartphones to our public spaces. Communication scholarship has long privileged visual and linguistic modalities. But what happens when our theories assume that to understand, one must see? Today, I want to challenge this vision-centric framework. My research examines how our preoccupation with visual representation creates hidden structural communication inequalities for those like my father who navigate the world through non-visual senses, specifically the blind and visually impaired community. I argue for a paradigm shift, as you can see in the right bottom, from representational communication to experiential communication, positioning the body and the senses as central to meaning making. The theoretical foundation based on which my research is based, to build this bridge, it draws upon four pillars of thought. First, Maurice Merleau-Ponty's phenomenology, and which reminds us that all human perception is fundamentally situated within embodied experience. Second, we lean on embodied cognition, where the argument is given that human cognition does not happen in an abstract vacuum. It emerges through active bodily interaction with our environment. And then we come to sensory and ethnography by Sarah Pink, and followed by Nick Koldru's critique of media paradigms to actively disrupt the visual bias that dominates modern communication studies. To capture these tactile and acoustic realities, this study adopts a mixed method. First, let me talk about the qualitative, the practice-based design that intentionally weaves together autoethnography, my own experience being a sighted person, and sensory ethnography, working with multiple groups of children, teens, and young adults. Our fieldwork was structured into 3 distinct phases. Phase 1 involved autoethnographic immersion. As I said, I participated in blindfolded simulations and sensory exercises like the Raisin meditation, for example, to document how a sighted researcher's vision-dependent assumption completely collapses when sight is removed. Phase 2 expanded this into participant observation, engaging in immersive environments like dinner in the dark that I am going to show you in the next slide, and logging 50+ distinct assistive communication interactions as a volunteer via the Be My Apps app, where I am a volunteer to help the blind and visually impaired persons. Once again, tribute to my father. Phase 3 culminated in sensory storytelling workshops featuring purposive sampling of 65 blind children and teens aged 8 to 14 and 42 young adults aged 21 to 30, where we utilized metaphorical, highly textured objects like ropes, stones, fabrics, and as primary communication tools. Okay, so this is dining in the dark. As you can see, as a sighted person, you need to get blindfolded. You enter a space completely dark, and you are guided by blind people, because over there in 0% illumination, surviving is completely impossible for a sighted person. They will lose their sanity. And before you are actually going for the dining in experience, where you can't really see the food, you only have to touch, feel, smell, and have the sensory experience, you are supposed to walk on a terrain which is not smooth. So sometimes there is sand, there is mud, there is uphills and downhills, and then you finally arrive in the dining hall. So how is it for a sighted person? I did take part as an autoethnographic immersion, and this is where we dined, and it was completely dark, and believe you me, 50% or maybe 70% flavor, essence of the food was completely gone because we couldn't see the food. The next, where I took 50+ case studies, where I am a volunteer I help the visually impaired people navigate their daily challenges, and as you can see, which one is baked beans? The one in your right. Somebody is calling from Australia, somebody is calling from Bangladesh, and somebody from our own Delhi, and they are facing regular challenges. There's a lady who called me to find out whether the gas was on. And somebody has ordered for Lays and Bingo. They want to know which one is green and which one is red, which is completely difficult for them. The third case study is, instead of focusing on, see my point, let me shed some light, and then telling textually, verbally, where we used materials that are sensory. And the experience completely shifted both for adults as well as for children. And when I'm talking about the findings, to analyze this rich heterogeneous data that was gathered from workshop transcripts, field notes, and reflexive journals, I employed Brown and Clark's framework for reflexive thematic analysis. Rather than forcing premature qualification, this method allowed me to code and cluster qualitative data into 4 primary themes, as you can see, that emerged through the 3 phases of the field work. Let us look closely at what the themes revealed. Decentering vision, that you can see, highlighted how meaning making thrives outside of sight. One participant noted, I don't need to see the story, I can feel it. Then senses as language. Physical objects ceased to be mere props, they became communication agents. The third one, breakdown of visual narratives, exposed the profound fragility of vision-dependent storytelling. And the last one, co-creation and agency, when sight was removed as the dominant leveled the playing field. It fostered a deeply collaborative space where blind people and sighted volunteers, they co-created shared realities together, giving away the hierarchy between both. And to conclude, what does this mean for our discipline in communication? These findings reveal that communication inequalities are fundamentally rooted in sensory hierarchies. By privileging sight, we inadvertently marginalize alternative ways of knowing. Sensory storytelling challenges this exclusion by enabling genuine embodied participation. To conclude, communication must be radically reimagined as an embodied multisensory process. Sensory storytelling does more than just to accommodate. It actively bridges structural inequalities. I dream of a world when actually one day, when we are navigating through those uphills and downhills on the road will communicate, give signals to people who are not sighted. I dream of a world when one day the Bingo or the Lays packet will have some sign for which they don't have to call up the volunteers. They by default, by touching and feeling, they will have the sensory story being told that this is the green lay or this is the red lay. I dream of a world when my father, instead of taking my help, could have maintained the dignity and the quality of life. Thank you so much.
Questions, everybody? Yes.
Truly appreciate your work. It's actually very sensitive and very touchy, and I really hope that your dreams do come true for everyone else. For me, the question, the question that I have is, when you're trying to translate these narratives into totally sensory or tactile experiences, do you think some elements of the usual communication may get lost there? If yes, what are they? And what are some of the experiences that we may not experience in our usual way of communication, which can be gained through those sensory experiences?
Thank you so much for the question. Usually, let me talk about our personal lives. Usually when we break up and get into another relationship, we keep on comparing with the previous one, right? Do we always get the flavor that we had in the past broken relationship that we get in the new one? Never, right? So because I don't necessarily work with the
blind community, but all sectors, most of the sectors rather, autism spectrum as well as the speech impaired. The way the stories are told for the blind community is totally, completely different when you are telling the same story for the speech impaired community. So always there will be scopes, something is lost, but you are gaining something else. Thank you.
This is a very different presentation, and we really appreciate the passion with which you have done it. But if we, for the case of research, if we are focusing on storytelling, that is, if that is the main focus, there was a point of time when oral storytelling was the medium for our culturally, for us culturally. So for ages, nothing was written. So Shobi Shruti chilo. So, and people, when we talked of Boro, Pahar, Shobuj, Jomi, we used to imagine it in our mind only. So when you are talking about storytelling, in the 3 case studies that you have done, those case studies look much more functional. Means, could you have incorporated a case study where visually impaired or maybe autistic children, when they were told a story, and there has to be a cognitive reaction to that. So how or in what manner the story sparked a reaction? Okay, yeah.
This is that case study where the same thing was repeated with the children and teens, and the same thing was repeated with young adults. And we used, as I said, so this particular thing was done in Udaipur in association with the French Institute, where we divided the entire group into 6 clusters. So each group had 4 to 6 children and teens, and each group were handed over buckets. And buckets had 6 objects: egg, rope, fabric. So rope represented the snake in the story. The fabric, so what we used to do, you know, as soft as silk, as strong as steel, as dark as night, as glittery as the stars. So the storytelling, oral storytelling was actually done with them, but with the tweak where...
We use physical
yes,
elements.
Yes, totally.
Any other question? No? Thank you. Thank you.
So nothing from you?
I'll
Okay,
make
sure.
concluding remark.
Thank you so much.
I am missing Snehashish Babu and Swayantan. Yes. No? Achha, theek hai. We have had 1, 2, 3, about 8 papers, different subjects, different areas, but 2 papers impressed me, the 2 papers which impressed me the most, again it's a subjective, impressed me the most, one by her, and the second is by Dr. Mukesh, that Islamophobia, Dr. Mukesh Kumar. Give them a very big hand. I should give them a very big hand. That's my impression. Let me tell you why I am impressed. I'm not an easy person to be impressed, that's my wife tells me. So, যতই ভালো রান্না করে দাও তোমাকে পছন্দই হয় না, stuff like that. So, what impressed me, first Mukeshji's stories, relevance. It's very timely, very relevant, and it's around us, and pointing to the known phenomena with data which is quantifiable. That is what research does to you. It kind of rubs something into your soul that, look here, this is happening here and now. That's precisely what social science research, I believe, need to do. Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for doing this story. But please remember to add the points that we had discussed. Anupam had, or Arindam had raised certain points, I had raised certain points. Please, and she has raised certain points. Please include that and it will be a wonderful book. Now, coming back to Dr. Priyanka Chatterjee's paper, what impressed me is this area we really don't look into. It remains kind of an untouched, unexplored, almost forgotten area. We do not, like we tend to push it aside from our mind space probably. Thank you for bringing this into our collective mind space. That stories could be told from a sensory perspective, right? That is something people who are working with communication and inclusive communication, and this has some practical implications also. Like say for example, railways have included Braille in their toilets and all. Stories like this, papers like this, which will foreground this problem, will probably force people to be more aware of this situation and make some practical changes in public spaces. Even at home, instead of stairs, maybe we can have more of ramps. And in our alleys and pathways, maybe we can have a dedicated pathway with raised tiles for visually impaired people. So both these papers have practical implications, and that's what impressed me much. Thank you very much. Others, your papers were also good. ऐसा नहीं है कि अच्छा ये बूढ़ा तो दोनों को ही बोल के छोड़ दिया, हमारा क्या होगा? ऐसा नहीं है. Your papers were also good, है ना? Practical implications के अलावा भी कुछ चीजें हैं which many of you wanted to explore. Papers were good. Some papers needed probably little more study, probably little more close viewing, probably little more adding more facts into it. But overall, it's a good session. Thank you very much.
Just একটা জিনিস মানে আমার এটা খুব মনে হয়, whenever you are doing a research, see, we understand the value of a neglected glass pane in a kitchen only after it's broken. That you realize that it has been saving you from the water and the air and the storm, and had been helping your kitchen all this while. So research papers are like breaking the, picking up those broken glasses and telling people that, okay, this is also important. So whenever you do a research, please ensure that it adds a certain value to the system that you are talking about, because your researches would be printed. Someone else will read it, someone else will cite it. So that element of novelty should always be in your research. All of you have been very good. You'll have done great studies into your research. All the papers that I heard, they were spoken about very passionately, and we thank you, all of you, for taking part in the conference. We'll head for lunch.
Thank you all the presenters for your thought-provoking contributions. We have now Professor Mrinal Chatterjee for your insightful comments and for expertly moderating this session. With this, we come to the end of technical session 3. We hope the exchanges during this session will inspire further research, collaboration and dialogue. Thank you once again for your participation. We hope you all had an enriching experience for the ICA Regional Hub Conference 2026. Before we conclude and disperse, I would like to request all our presenters and our esteemed session chair to kindly join in for a group photograph.